But so it's kind of interesting. I'll be remiss not to talk about the ways in which the other side of the social comparison theory leading towards. I was kind of reading kind of just an old article, just sort of, they've done numerous studies on sort of how depression is affected by comparing yourself and by seeing people presenting their most successful selves, and there was this kind of sense that maybe upward comparisons, this person is having a more successful life than me, is creating this depression, whereas downward I feel better. Maybe there's that kind of boosting your ego by comparing to people who maybe are who are airing their dirty laundry, and it's really bad, and at least I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
But
isn't that why we add our old high school buddies?
That's exactly why you remain friends with a lot of people that you could have just filtered out, because despite all of the terrible things that they post or repost, but so the study that more recently kind of found that whether it's upward or downward or even sort of neutral comparison socially, that they all linked to a kind of greater likelihood for depressive symptoms. And so kind of the idea of sort of comparison just in general as sort of if you're feeling kind of isolated and separate and you're not interacting, engaging, but you're comparing, like that contributes to depression. And and I think that, and where you kind of mentioned how as a platform it's trying to move toward actually engaging people, sort of making it more interactive. I kind of think they're responding to some of that information and maybe sort of trying to adjust for that. And do you feel like that they'll be successful in doing that?
I do. I think there's some platforms that naturally do that better, and it tends to be platforms that have fewer cues on them, where it is more discussion based. Now, granted, people are still bullies in certain areas. Some people are just awful trolls that we have. But I think when you have more text-based messages only, you don't get as much of that comparison.
Right.
Just because there's fewer cues for us to pull up on and to compare. There's less data, essentially, for us to have that analysis to have. But when you get into more ones that are richer, of course, like Facebook, Instagram, I say Facebook and Instagram. Facebook owns Instagram.
Right,
I think of course, there is a financial reason for them to do this, to be socially responsible. But they recognize that it's their responsibility to take care of their consumers, to create it as a place that they want to continue to go back to and create experiences there. So yeah, they're trying to adapt the way that they send messages. Now, they don't do a great job of monitoring it. Twitter has tried, and that has been, well, you've probably heard the criticisms of Twitter trying to monitor these spaces for us. But it also takes, that's where we're kind of going back to that social integration, where it takes other people to fill in and help explain and to reassure what they're seeing, to be real with one another. And that also comes with, I think, I feel like I'm tying a lot of things in that we said earlier, but the good societal awareness of like mental illness and our willingness to talk about it. If we weren't willing, there's still a stigma, of course, with it, but if we were to compare like where it was 20 years ago, Facebook may not have felt the need to do anything about it, that it's still something that we don't talk about or address. It isn't an issue for us. But as we're seeing this effect from Facebook, we're becoming more aware. We're seeing these issues, and it's happening because it's on a social and public area that we can document. Face to face, it's hard to document. Nobody walks around automatically. Some people, YouTubers, walk around recording all the time, but most people don't. And so those situations, because they weren't documented, they're harder to kind of communicate on a mass level of identifying problems and that we all need to talk about it. But on social media, that's documented. Even on private networks, always pretend that it's public.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I always
That's
instruct.
sort of like the cautionary advice that you receive
Yes.
is never, just always assume that anything you post online is not private, and that's how concerned are we really with privacy at this point? Is posting on social media, is there still a sense that it's surrendering your right to privacy? I think my Instagram account name is actually Nate and his lack of privacy, because just to kind of there was this big freak out moment where we can use your content in our ads, and there was this huge outcry, and people were all going to quit, and it was another situation where everyone was going to quit a certain social media platform that they didn't. And I think just a good general rule to kind of guide you in that is if a service is free, then you are the product. And it shouldn't really be a surprise that if you send a message or you upload something, that they own that content. You didn't pay them to say, I'm just going to secretly store this and you can never use it. There's you sign these agreements, and they that you give
even
them
if you
permission.
didn't read them.
You didn't read them. No one's
I've never
ever
read
read them.
this.
No. If you have, then that is actually a mental health diagnosis.
If you have, you're probably not on that platform.
Right. Exactly.
You'd opt out. But and I'm not surprised. We were talking about how Facebook is helping. Facebook can track so much that I wouldn't be surprised if they are able to start not diagnosing, but like keeping track and looking for cues that might be harmful. There's any text analysis that they can have, image analysis. They're paying attention to how long you stay on different pages, the comments that you provide, the things you choose to click on, how often you go back and check at different pages, how often that person's going back and interacting with you. So they're able to engage how much you're interacting with others and how others are interacting with you and over what. Not that they would share that data, right?
Of course not. Yeah.
And just because they have it doesn't mean that they're actively putting it to use. But
if I sent you a direct message, and that is private information, that's never going to get out. Ever.
Right. Like when I messaged my husband what I want for Christmas, it's amazing that on his ads the next day there's that item while he's scrolling Facebook.
Yeah, there's some dark magic that just knows. And we tend to think it's it's like maybe Siri's just I left Siri on, or there's a microphone listening on, and it really doesn't even need that. It's just you just normally using your content, you tend to talk about the things that you're interested in.
We better be careful. We're going to get into an episode of Black Mirror now.
Right. I think we already kind of are. So yeah.
But I think going back to that, kind of pulling in that concept of how we create our identity on there, and even on the concept of depression and it being difficult, if it's still interactive of or reflective of how your actual social or face-to-face experiences are. I don't want to say your real experiences, because we know social media experiences are real experiences. They're not something separate. It's not that we have, these fake social media emotions that we get from it that are separate, that only exist on that platform. It's still seeing all of that. Now, certain triggers can occur in that place, but it's knowing that this is still a holistic way, and that building relationships as a whole, whether that's on social media, whether that's in face-to-face, is still important, that we're pulling that in and using all of that to impact our identity.